Hey, Merry Christmas, everyone. I made kind of an unfair rant against A Most Dangerous Time based on the rules. Unfair, why? Not because their rules are good. They're not. They've got serious problems. And some of it may be translation or whatever. But it led me to think about rules in general and where we are. And I just wanted to kind of babble about that for a little while today. So first thing is, different games and different styles of games need different rules. It's that simple. You can't move a rule set that's designed, in this case, say, or a design that's made for something like Warriors of God to something a little more complicated, like a most dangerous time. Avalon Hill faced this problem right from the beginning. Their old classics had really, really simple systems. The rules could be very, very loosely structured. Not ridiculously so, but they weren't that far from, say, how Monopoly's rules are structured. Now, what we're seeing these days, and after that, Avalon Hill never really got a grasp, in my opinion, on how to write really complex rules. They sort of took several different paths at once and never settled on this is the way we should go. Contrast that with SPI, which right from the beginning said, these games are getting too complicated to write in an informal standard. We're going to set a very specific type of rule set in place, and everybody's going to follow it. And then they kind of relaxed it here and there, but for the most part they tried to do it, which created some horrible things like role-playing games with legalese in them everywhere. It was just, that doesn't work either, because you cannot fit every game into one standard. But let's talk about war games in specific. The SPI standard works very well once you get above a very limited complexity level. It looks kind of silly on something like the Napoleon's Art of War, and you can see there they took kind of the Ares standard that they started deploying, which is a little less specific. I think the epitome, the very pinnacle of good rules came with victory games, where you had people who came from the expatriates from SPI, who knew what they wanted in rules. They had experience writing games and maybe felt a little too restricted by the SPI rules. So they settled back a little bit, made really good choices, really good decisions, beautiful rule sets. I cannot think of a single Victory Games game that doesn't do a damned good job on its rules. Now, in modern times, I'm seeing some strange tendencies. So, my favorite company in terms of rules right now seems to be the Gamers. But they have kind of a cheat in place, which is that most of their games are these systems where they're able to devote a lot of attention to one rules set and really, really perfect it. And you have a similar thing over on Multi-Man with the ASL rules, where they inherited this beautiful set of rules. Now, looking further, let's look at what Multi-Man does on their own productions. They're writing rules that aren't too different from, say, what Games Workshop was putting out in the 80s. I don't know if they've improved at all, by the way, but Games Workshop's rules convinced me that no matter what they put out, I was really, really hesitant to ever buy their games because there would be inconsistencies, there would be serious problems just in terms of trying to comprehend what the rules are intending. The worst rule sets that I've seen over time are probably the translated AWE ones. I give them a special pass simply because they're stretching with their games themselves. Things like Europa Universalis, La Grande Guerre, La Révolution Française probably does not need such a crappy rule set, but they were pushing the levels of complexity by leaps and bounds over what anybody else was doing, and has done as far as I know. I would love to see if somebody's got something at that level. Whiff. And I don't remember Whiff's rules being terribly bad, but I don't remember them being terribly good either. I actually prefer the Avalon Hill, what is it? Global War. It's Advanced Third Reich and Empire of the Rising Sun. I prefer their rule set to what I saw of Whiff. I was back in 4th edition of Whiff, though. So, why I say it's unfair, going back to the beginning, is because there have been companies that have put out bad rule sets, especially fringe companies, things like Fantasy Games Unlimited, Games Workshop, I don't know, nothing else comes to mind directly. But there have been companies that have been putting out questionable rule sets all along. However, I feel like a company with kind of the gravitas of a multi-man should be putting out something at least as good as Avalon Hill. GMT's rules are kind of at that level, the Avalon Hill level, which is to say, I think they give their designers too much flexibility in writing the rules. And that works great when you've got Richard Berg and Mark Herman working on the rule set, because they know what a good rule set is. When you've got newer designers writing their first rule set, make sure you get somebody assigned to help them work through how the rules should read and how to make them clearer, etc. This isn't just, you don't hire an English major to do this. You hire an English major who has a good history of rules and gaming. Someone who really understands what works and what doesn't. Let's go back now briefly to the history aspect on the Avalon Hill rules. Like I said, they forked in many directions, and none of them were perfect, in my opinion. But the one that worked the worst was their pulsed or programmed instruction sets. They provide something that is great when you're trying to learn the game for the first section. And then if you play the second and third sections, if you learn the rules exactly as they're intended to be learned, I'm sure it works great. I don't learn rules that way. I read the whole book, right? I want to play the advanced scenario. I'm not a beginning gamer. I can think of one game where I absolutely needed to play an introductory scenario for, and that was Vietnam. And I still read the whole rule book. The introductory scenario was great. It showed me how those combat rules actually, how they operated, but I want the whole rules in one place. Why? Because it's a nightmare to try to reference a rule book when it's spread out in 3 different sections and the rules are being reversed from one section to another, which we see in the programmed instruction, things like Hitler's War, Starship Troopers, etc. The rules change. It's not like let's add more rules on, which works fine. It's that sorry for the discontinuity. So it's not just that you're adding new rules, but you're also removing old rules. In Hitler's War in particular, what you have is, say, the naval rules end up being reversed between one set of the program instructions and another. Let me go to one more point, which I want to really cover, which is that, excuse me. A rule set should never, and this is a matter of maintainability, and it comes from software design and, as opposed to rules design, but The same principle applies. A rule set should never have the same thing written in two different places. The gamers get this completely right, and they had to learn this the hard way through their series. But if you're gonna, but it makes sense also when you're writing the rules themselves, when you're working on them in the rough draft, because it's going out to play testers. They're going to come up with corrections. The key here is if you have it in multiple different places, you have to change it in every one. So the correct way to do it is to write, or the easy to maintain way, I'll contend it's correct, but is to write the rules in one place and reference them elsewhere. And in order to do that right, for anything reasonably complex, you're going to want to put to use something similar to the SPI format for numbering, where the reference will get you right to the exact rule you want to hit. It doesn't get you to within a couple paragraphs of the point that you're trying to get to. You want the couple of sentences that you're reading to directly apply to what you look up when you look at the cross-reference. You also want a good index on a decent sized rule set. This is something SPI wasn't too good at. Victory Games definitely added this, and I'm seeing it in the GMT and in the gamers games as well. If I've got something complicated, it's going to be a pain in the ass for me to find the reference that I need. I don't want to page through the rules looking for it. I want to open up an index, find the issue I want, see the rule number I want, or page, go there, and read what I need to know. I don't want to page through the book trying to figure out where it was. I don't know what I've said so far. AWE is horrible on all counts. It sucks that we're going back to, or that there are established companies that are putting out crap that's like Games Workshop, what they put out in the 80s, or some smaller fringe companies that never made it. I can understand it there. You know, if you're trying to push your game out and you're on a low budget and you don't really know what it costs and you don't know what production values to apply, yeah, you know, and maybe your game will be good enough that it'll overcome those difficulties. Alright, I'm going to let this go because I'm not sure what I said in the last one that got cut off and what I didn't. My damn battery is a mess. Merry Christmas again.